Welcome back to Zero Gravity Live, the weightless weekly tech talk podcast, bringing all the latest news and discussions right to you. It's been a absolute wild week since our last show, and we'll get all into that soon. But more importantly than that, we've got a special guest on the show. Sterling's out on vacation this week, joining us. Casey King, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm so honored to get to jump in today, especially with such an exciting week we've had.
We're honored to have you. You know, it's always under interesting circumstances that we have guests on, and the big news of the last week is no exception. So we will get into that. Before we do, got to find out, Casey, what's going on in your office?
Okay, so I woke up this morning and I felt like it was like show and tell. I was like running around like, what is actually going to be cool? So excited. Okay, so I decided on this. I don't know if you guys do this, but I collect matchboxes from my favorite restaurants, and I keep them in this little dish. And then whenever I want to light a candle, I use one of my fun matchboxes. So have them from all over Atlanta, Charleston, New York, Austin, all the different cities I've been to. It's just a fun little decor and collection I got going. So that's mine.
That is a super cool collection. Now, you mentioned Atlanta. You are from Atlanta, right?
I'm from just south of Atlanta, yes.
I want to know where our audience is from. So please let us know in the chat where y'all not are watching from, but where are you from originally? That's a different question for this week. See if we can get a little more information about our viewers. Now, Matt, as another Georgia resident, you are in a different location than we were used to seeing you in. So what's going on in your office this week?
Yeah, so this is not a virtual background. This is actually another physical location. So yeah, I'm based out of Kennesaw, Georgia normally, so not too far from Casey. But this week I'm working remote down in Dothan, Alabama, which is where, my parents' house is. We wanted to give the kids, one full week of grandma time, before school starts back. So I'm here in a makeshift setup studio. I wish I could show you guys behind the scenes, but basically I have my gear on a ladder. So we're making it work, right? So one of the cool things that I wanted to share, Anthony. So behind me is a room. So basically the wall is like right here. I'm at the threshold, and this was my dad's old office. So my late father passed away February this year. So this is all his old memorabilia. We haven't touched anything, and one of the things I kind of wanted to throw out and poll. Let me go this way. Poll to the audience here. If anybody knows anything unusual or notices anything unusual about this flag, let me know in the comments, because this is something that I thought was really, really unique. And I felt like, this will be the topic of conversation for what's in my cool office this week. And I'll give you a hint. There's something about the stars. So for those of you who can count really quick. So really cool flag. It was World War II era. So I just think, a lot of the swag, knife collection, all kinds of cool stuff in the background. So Anthony, if this was my regular venue, we'd have a lot more cool stuff to show and tell. But just for today's episode, the flag is really cool, and I'll keep monitoring the comments. If nobody drops it in there, I'll let you guys know at the end of the show.
Excellent. I'm very curious if someone can figure it out. Also, just love the fact, Matt. The different location, but the history in there it's palpable. It's super cool. Yeah, awesome. Well, Casey, you thank you for sharing your Matchbox collection, and Matt giving us a tour of your different surroundings. Let's get into it. So, like I said before, a lot has happened, and we will talk about that shortly. But before we do, Casey, when we first talked about having you on, since Sterling's out this week on a much needed vacation, we said, what does Casey bring to the show? And then we found out you were a lifeguard once upon a time. And I thought that's perfect. Like I had no idea that you were, and that you were out there saving lives. And then you said you didn't save any lives at all in your entire time.
But also, no one lost a life. That's an important stat to go with the first one. So,
did you blow a whistle?
Probably, but like for something like please walk. Not for anything cool or life-changing.
No running. Got it.
No running. Yeah.
So you're a lifeguard, and you actually gave us this really cool analogy about, the dangers of ransomware and lifeguarding. I thought, well, that'd be a perfect way to start a show. And, it's perfectly akin to what we do. So why don't you walk us through a little bit about like where your mind was when you were thinking of that?
Well, yeah. So we were talking about, the show live, talked about the shark attacks. And then we were talking about me being a lifeguard. And though I never saved a life, I will say I was CPR trained 3 times. I knew what to do if something did happen. And, when it comes to things like kids in a pool, we make sure we know what to do if something happens. But when it comes to ransomware, which we're using technology every single day, we don't know what to do when something happens. And so it's one of those things where you never think it's going to happen to you until it does. And then you have no protocol. So that was my analogy. I love taking anything and tying it back to ransomware because it is such a big part of our lives. So it really does tie into anything. And just like anything else that is a great thing can also be a dangerous thing with technology, right? So got to make sure we have the practices in place to handle the situation when it comes up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Matt.
I was just going to say I couldn't agree more. And, with CPR training, frankly, as a quick aside, I feel like everybody should have that because you just never know when you might be in a situation where somebody around you is not trained and, somebody needs that life-saving treatment. So kudos for you for getting that. I think we should all take a lesson and get that. But you're right. So when an event happens, we always talk about, right? It's when, not if. You've got to have a plan. And, what is it the old saying goes, failing to have a plan is planning to fail. That's essentially, it could never be more true, right? Because if you don't have a plan, you don't have a run book, you're not ready when that event happens to your business, you're going to be out and you're going to have reputation impacts, possibly financial impacts. And, Anthony, you mentioned, the events of last week. We're still dealing with that in Atlanta at the airport. I mean, Hartsfield-Jackson is an absolute train wreck right now because nobody had a plan on how to recover quickly from that event. And all it takes is, especially in an airport of all things, all it takes is a small little ripple and the chain reaction is just like dominoes falling. So definitely want to make sure you have a plan in place for anything in life, really.
Yeah, completely agree. And the other thing I love about that analogy too is like we put a lot of value on life, as human beings, as we should. It's pretty valuable to us as a species, but like we don't think about the life disruption that comes with ransomware or update failures that occur. Like this is a disruption to lives. And I think it's hard for us to conceptualize that because when healthcare gets impacted, when airlines get impacted, when, service industry is disrupted, there are potential lives on the line by these things. So like we have lifeguards, we have, firefighters and policemen and all kinds of different service industries out there to ensure that we stay safe. But I think we often forget the kind of impact technology has on our well-being and our lives. So I love that analogy because having a lifeguard for your data or, for your business, your infrastructure, whatever it is, like we don't really think about that. That's your security team. And you just kind of hope they're doing it. They're not out there blowing a whistle saying no running. It's then they send you that phishing email test and you click the link. That's the most whistleblowing you get.
So true. So true.
Now, before we get into the news of the week, I do want to hit one more thing you brought up, Casey, that was pretty cool before we get into some serious security discussion. You actually shared this with me and I had no idea this is a thing. So can you walk us through what I'm looking at here? This came from you. The Built MasterCard, is it worth it? We've never talked finance on this show before, but when you explained this to me, I was like, I feel like we need to. So what is this?
Okay, yeah. So anyone who knows me in my personal life is so tired of hearing me talk about this, especially my brother. I've asked him like 10 times if this thing is real. But basically, it's a credit card that was built for renters. So with us using technology and everything being so at our fingertips, I've found myself really learning a lot about finance. And this credit card came up and I was like, oh my gosh, how do more young people not know about it? Basically, what the Built credit card is a credit card where you can pay for your rent without any kind of fee associated. So even if your landlord won't accept the Built credit card as a Built partner, you actually get set up with your own account number and routing number. So it kind of acts like a bank. And then Built just bills you via the credit card for the difference. And if that doesn't work too, they'll also send a check to your landlord. So basically, you're earning points on your biggest expense of the month who wouldn't want to do that? And I'm just so confused why more people aren't talking about it. But there's a lot of controversy around it too, right? Because it's like, what economics are behind this? I don't really understand. So there's a couple different things that we can talk about. But first, I just wanted to get into y'all's thoughts about this. Is it too good to be true?
I mean, does it work for mortgages?
That's
my first question.
Yeah, they're actually talking about it. I think that's one of their business growth plans is to move into mortgages.
I just don't like, I read the article after you sent it to me, and like I read this section that we've highlighted here, is it too good to be true? And they say presumably Built loses money when giving out rewards and then mailing a check to a landlord it has no relationship with. But it's part of a bigger play. Like, I get that. That's, that is business 101. It's kind of the same way that why is my mind blanking on all of them? Uber Eats, all of the food delivery, Grubhubs and the like, they lose a little bit of money on the transaction on the food. They're hoping that, they're able to build up a big enough network long term that they can then crank up the rates and you depend on them, and competition drives the value there. So like, I get it. Sometimes the consumer does get a really good deal and the producer takes the hit. But like with finance, it's so curious because like finance is all about making money always, all the time. And it does seem too good to be true. So have you run into any catches yourself?
No, so I don't have the card. Let me give that disclaimer because I'm still skeptical.
We're working on it.
We're working on it. I'm doing my research, that's for sure. But some things that are interesting about it, so you do have to have 5 charges a month in order to get the points. So you can't just use it for your rent. So I think they're hoping that some people will kind of start using it more and more, and they'll see more of that overspend and people not paying it off. But so far they haven't seen it. Another thing is there's no annual fee, but there's also no sign-on bonus. So you don't really get to the point where you're earning a max amount of points for paying your rent for 3 months. So there's that too. So they definitely have some things built in that make a little bit more sense. But overall, I think Wells Fargo is the one that's losing on this one from what I've heard in my research. And for consumers, it's just kind of a thing right now where it's like, hey, use it till it's gone, because come 2029, it might not exist anymore. So
it's moving past 2.0.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. You in your description, you said something that like stuck to me. I wanted to earmark that. If you pay it off each month. And sadly, I feel like that's what's going to happen, and that's what they're banking on, especially sadly with younger folks, is, oh, you mean I don't have to pay my entire rent this month? I can pay a half of it? Sure. And then you start getting into the whole cycle of interest and credit, the typical credit card, right? So I think if you're of course, this is the first I've heard of it. I haven't done due diligence either, but let's say all things considered equal and it's legit. I think as long as you're disciplined and you can say, well, my rent is X, I'm going to pay X. There's never, ever going to be any carryover, but I get to earn points. Sounds great. But I think that's where you run the risk of people not being disciplined enough and carry imbalances, and it slowly starts to build up. And I think that is probably what these big banks are banking on, is people doing that. And that's when they start earning money. They build up, a big network. You get, I don't know, a percentage of them not paying it off each month. Interest starts rolling up, and that's where they get paid back, I bet.
Exactly. So that's exactly right. When I did listen to a podcast on it it's from the New York Times, their journal, their podcast, they did a whole unbiased review on it, and they said exactly that. Wells Fargo is praying that renters don't pay.
Yeah.
And it makes sense.
Every bank is.
Unfortunately for Wells Fargo, usually people who have signed up for this card are very responsible. So shout out to the generation of renters out there who are paying off their rent and using this card. Good for you guys. But yes, like anything, there's best practices. If you're not sure you're going to be able to pay that off, I don't recommend the card. So anyways, interesting topic.
I like it. This whole episode's got a theme of like caution, research, and trepidation, and execution of a plan. This is good. I like where this theme is going. Before we get into, I want to hear your topic next, Matt. Before we do that, a couple of shout outs. So we got a whole bunch of people coming from a lot of different locations in the chat. I just want to make sure we hit all these. We got Netherlands, Philadelphia. Luis mentions he was born in Santiago de Chile, but is based in Pamplona, Navarra, Spain. I'm hoping I'm not butchering those names. We've got cheers from south of Italy in the Cilento area, like welcome all of you. And Matt, I will let you reveal our trivia winner of the day.
Yeah, 5-foot fisher, got it nail on the head. It was a 48-star flag from pre-1959 when Alaska and Hawaii joined the United States. So I just thought that was really cool. So
That's
yeah, to your
very
point,
cool.
lots of great places watching, lots of people tuning in. Really appreciate y'all's time for sure.
Yeah, thanks all for tuning in today and checking us out, and congratulations on getting that trivia 5-foot fisher. We have nothing to give you, but you have the pride of knowing that you won this round, so that's enough for most folks.
Solid.
Now, Matt, what are you going to take us down the path of today?
Yeah, let me reshare it. I think when you shared the first time, it canceled my share. So let me kick this guy off and hang tight. Is that the wrong screen? I think.
I see a graph cast. Oh,
yeah, that's what it's supposed to be. So let's do this again. Here
I do
we
have to
go.
give a shout out to Matt. He's literally working from a ladder
working on a ladder, baby. All right, so Sterling's not here, so I feel like I got free liberty to say AI 20 more times, just as that inside joke that we all have. But one of the things that we've talked about plenty of times on this show is technology working for us and not just being tech and being smart just for the fact of being smart. Hashtag Wi-Fi toothbrushes, right? I mean, there's reasons why you put smarts into things, and there's reasons for AI really helping. Okay, if anybody were to name the number one profession where people can just wake up one day and have a 50-50 shot of being right, and every time they're wrong, they just carry on to the next day like nothing happened, meteorologist, I'm sure, would be at the top of everyone's list, right? They just go out, yep, it's going to rain. And then when they're wrong, nothing ever happens, right? So one of the things that I came across that I thought was super cool, and frankly, I clicked on it just because of the URL. And you might not be able to see it up there, but it's deepmind.google.com. And I'm like, this sounds intriguing. So I click on this, and this is basically what Google is using to improve AI weather forecasting. And there's a lot of stuff in here that that's you've got to read to kind of understand it. But one of the things I wanted to point out is, let me get down to the actual stat that I saw. Bear with me here. Let me find it. Yeah, so here it is. So what I thought was so impressive is if I highlight this section right here, and again, let me try to zoom in. There we go. All right. So basically, what this is saying is this new model is able to forecast in what was it, a minute? Whereas previously, using the same stuff prior to this AI was using much higher computational power. So essentially supercomputers. And it was taken, sometimes, what is this, 10 days? Where's the stats? So you got accuracy. I don't know why I'm not finding the actual time in here, but basically, when I was reading through this earlier, less than a minute on a single Google TPU V4 machine. And in comparison, the same forecast could take hours in a supercomputer with hundreds of machines. So right away, that's one earmark to note: time.
Yeah.
Okay. But if it was all the same accuracy, that's great. But then you go on to read and look at the improvement of accuracy down here. 99.7% is the accuracy that this new model would have when you were measuring what's called the troposphere, which is basically a huge section of the atmosphere. I think it was 6 to 20 kilometers or something like that high. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that we go from hours to minutes, and we go from whatever the accuracy was before. And I kind of used the joke, we all know what it was before. Nobody knows how to predict weather. Like, they kind of give it their best guess. And I guess with hurricanes, you've got a little bit more guidance where you can follow the track, but you're increasing this to almost 100% accuracy. Like, that's crazy. Like, I mean, to me, this is a great example of, we need this, because we've all been a part of something as simple as, it's not going to rain today. Boom, you have like massive, washouts, all the way up to the whole idea of today's show is, life-saving things. You're drowning. protect your data from drowning, and just generally speaking, protecting yourself from all different things, hurricanes, tornadoes, these types of events that weather forecasting can help save lives. This is awesome. And I feel like this is tech used where it's needed, whereas right now we're just taking shots in the dark in some cases. And this was like really eye opening to see that 99.7% accuracy in minutes. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, the first thought that comes to my mind, Matt, is snowpocalypse
Yeah.
in Georgia, and the horrible events that could have been saved
Correct.
with this technology. I mean, even let's think back to that. Like, I remember being stuck on a bus for 2 hours waiting for my dad to come get me because of that. And because no one knew the weather and no one knew what to do in Georgia, we have no idea. And people watching not from Georgia are probably judging, and rightfully so.
Right.
So helpful back then. And I think, we can't be scared of technology, right? We have to know where it's good and where it's useful and use it for those things. And I think this is a great example of that. So I love it.
Listen, I live in hurricane state, right? I'm from Florida, born here, raised here, lived through many hurricanes here. But more importantly than that, I saw Twisters this weekend. And let me tell you, if Twisters had this technology, that movie wouldn't have happened.
Right. Because hours they've already set through the movie. Minutes they could walk out in the trailer, right?
Correct, right. Like, I mean, that was the whole thing. It's like, oh no, these rogue Twisters are coming out of nowhere. We couldn't predict them. But it's like, with 99.8% accuracy, that changes the game. And I'm very skeptical, as our viewers who recurring watching the show know. I don't find AI to be that compelling a technology, but this is actually significant. Like the amount of accuracy, if they're actually able to predict this, and I'm guessing they're using both a combination of typical meteorology as well as aggregational, like data learning, and the maturity models in there, like that. That's pretty compelling, and it can definitely save lives. To the earlier conversation, like, this is how you save lives from freak weathers, when you're able to see, like, well, what made this tornado or this hurricane become so deadly so quickly, and how do we get people out sooner? Like, this is awesome.
Yep. I thought it was super cool because there's so many use cases of AI that are just like, really? Do you really need it there? And this is one that, you actually do. This could really, really help accuracy and give people much better heads up. So that was my topic for the day. I know there's the elephant in the room with the CrowdStrike thing. Maybe we can chat about that a bit. But like, I thought this was really, really cool from a new emerging tech perspective.
It is.
What are your thoughts on the whole CrowdStrike thing, Anthony?
Well, firstly, Matt, thanks for bringing the good news. I'm always down for some good news on this show. I feel like you and Casey did a good job of that today. So last week there was two distinct instances that happened. There was the CrowdStrike thing, and there was the Microsoft Azure outage. Both happened like on the same day, around the same time frame. Like, super freaky that just everything fails on a Friday, especially like a big travel Friday, because you have your summer travelers on vacation. You just mentioned, you're here with your kids getting ready to go back to school. Everyone's trying to get that last minute travel in before the summer ends. You got kids getting ready to go back to college and business travel. And I think that's the perfect storm for everything to go down and wrong. And we're still not back up to 100% functionality. The airports are not back in place, except for Southwest Airlines, because they're running freaking Windows, was it XP?
I saw that.
Like,
somehow they dodged it because of being so outdated.
I've always liked Southwest Airlines, but now it's safe to say I love Southwest Airlines. I just like, and we jest, but this is the thing, right? With technology, especially with software as a service technology, when you're developing product and you're on a SaaS platform and you push out an update, everyone gets that update, regardless of whether or not they want it. This is very counterintuitive to the old model, where we're going to test this thing in a red-blue environment for 30 days and make sure that nothing goes wrong. Then we're going to flip it live in our channel and we'll get that update. But ransomware has made it so people need to update their services right away. Otherwise, you might have a day zero, security threat. And two, because it's SaaS, because we're all paying a subscription for everything in our lives now, you just get the update whether you want it or not. It's part of what you're paying for. And that led to the cataclysm of the weekend, which everything became inoperable, every service industry. Did it impact y'all at all?
Personally, I didn't notice any direct impacts. It's ironic down here in Dothan. We went to get takeout last night from Buffalo Wild Wings of all places, and I looked behind the bar. Sure enough, I took a picture of it. There's a blue screen of death sitting right there on their point of service system. I'm like, wow, like here we are. It's Sunday evening, and we're still having these issues, or Monday evening still got the problems. So, I think the widespread issues that this caused were just, I mean, devastating all over the globe. And it's funny because they came out with a fix pretty quick, but the problem is it's a manual fix. It takes somebody either doing restores, fingers on keyboards, going into safe mode, deleting the file, restarting. It's not super involved to fix it on a single machine, but if you have to fix this across, a company, it's a major problem. And to your point, Anthony, we're in today's world, we're almost stuck between a rock and a hard place because, like you said, 0-day exploits, you got to stay updated, you got to stay patched, you got to stay on the latest code, or else you run the risk of the newest ransomware, the newest phishing, or the newest virus. But then on the flip side, to your point, if somebody doesn't send their patches through quality control, you're going to be stuck there when something goes sideways. And that's why backups and recoveries are so critical, right? I mean, that's why we do what we do in this business. Veeam plus Object First is literally that perfect pairing about being able to recover quickly. And I'll give you an example. I actually saw a post from a former colleague, Brad, on LinkedIn the other day. Veeam even has a capability called a quick rollback. So rather than restoring, let's say, your whole business, you could literally do a quick rollback to the day before the patch. And what Veeam will do is only restore the blocks that were changed overnight. So what may have taken potentially hours or days, depending on the cumulative size of the server, you could have done exponentially faster if you had the plan and you knew what to do when something went sideways. So always have a plan.
Yes, I love that. And if you don't have a plan, have something in place, or like a team or someone who does have a plan, because that's the only way you get through this. Now, I do have two things to share because I guess first, Casey, did it impact you at all? Just curious.
It didn't impact me. I was lucky. But I did want to say, I just think it's so crazy how much we rely on data and technology and how unprepared we are for when it doesn't work. I mean, we use it all day, every day. And if it goes blank, we go blank. Like, it's crazy. And so, the knowledge, it's not talked about enough. Before I worked at Object First, I didn't understand either. And so I'm proud to work for Object First and for something that's taking care of this huge problem, because, we're seeing it every day. So.
I mean,
to take
blank,
we go blank. I love that.
Hashtag. Yeah, I'm stealing that. I was about to say, from taking a hat out of your cap, Anthony, about Johnny Raincloud, it's flat out scary is what it is. Because if something so insignificant as a rogue patch can basically ground all flight travel and, all airlines other than Southwest, I mean, that's crazy scary if that's all it takes. And this wasn't even malicious. Right? This was a genuine human error. It just didn't go through quality control. And here's the outcome. Imagine if it was a malicious attack, that got pushed out. I mean, yeah, it's scary to think about.
We got a good comment from a good friend of mine, Cliff Barcliff. He said, thoughts on CrowdStrike. Did customers know that updates can be pushed out their internal controls? If not, why not? And he mentioned he was a production ops manager in a previous lifetime, would never allow updates without testing in their own test dev environment. And it's amazing that airlines and some financials were impacted. Couldn't agree more. These are the questions we need to be asking. On a bit of a light note, in regards to this conversation, I do want to share, this was not true. I don't know if you saw this image over the weekend, but
I did, and I loved it.
This come out. This is fake. This is not real as much as we would love it to be. There was no blue screen on the Las Vegas Sphere, so I'm sorry to report that has been debunked. Now, unfortunately, the thing I am not as excited to share about is the aftermath. So now, this comes from Bleeping Computer, one of my favorite cybersecurity journals. Fake CrowdStrike fixes target companies with malware and data wipers. So it just continues, right? So what this means is now the damage has been done. We've mentioned people are still stuck trying to deal with all the problems that they have. And there are fixes on the internet that are posing as real fixes to the CrowdStrike problem. People are downloading them and they are being hit with malicious software. It's coming in the form of an email. Look at this, like, dear valued customer, which right away should be a trigger for most, but we know that doesn't always work, right?
Yeah.
Look for your name. Look for the simple things that make sure that it ensures that it's coming from a valid source. They've got their image in there. They've got attachments. Don't just open attachments, but it's bad, y'all. So there's the aftermath and there's the ambulance chasing, right? There's always going to be those that look to take advantage of this bad situation, and it's happening out there. So if you were impacted, please do your due diligence in ensuring that as you get back to business as usual, that you're not pulling something that's only going to make things worse for you.
Yep.
Go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say, I think there's never been, well, certainly there's been some strong cases, but in recent months, this is certainly the strongest case I've seen to have a backup and recovery plan. So the patch, the fix is one thing, but you're down. You were down, or you could have been down until it was realized what happened, until the patch got pushed out, till you implemented it. Again, if you had a recovery plan, you could be back up in minutes, and just restore from, prior to this issue. You may have a little data loss, but your company's afloat. And I saw, speaking of financial, hashtag this show is not about financial advice. don't do what we say. But I did notice this morning that they were down 13%. Like, CrowdStrike definitely took a hit because of this. And I also found it interesting that I guess the president, CEO, the main guy, is a former FBI guy, was there like his whole career. So his whole life has been security, doing things right, protecting people from bad things, I think was his direct quote. And it's, sometimes it's human error. Sometimes people just screw up. And, that's the reality. It's not always, ransomware. It's not always malicious bad actors. Sometimes it's the human element. And Anthony, I mean, as well as I, we talk about that so much on the show. It's like we can't get so hyper focused on ransomware that we forget everything else that can go sideways in the tech world. I mean, all it takes is one person not checking code and thinking the patch is good, and boom, here you go. And like to Clifford's point, like I don't want them pushing updates unless I authorize it, because I want to make sure it's going to work. Maybe I check it on one server first before the entire company. So there's a lot of things that went wrong here that hopefully we learn from and make better going forward.
Yeah, completely agree. I think, it's funny when it happened, my parents texted me, like, have you heard of this company called the CrowdStrike? I'm like, yeah, I love CrowdStrike. They're awesome. Like, yeah, I mean, like, and it's still true, right? Like, yes, they're responsible for this thing happening, but it literally could have been any company that offers software as a service solution that provides business critical infrastructure for, service industry. Like, it literally could be any company that this happened to, and it just knocks out the entire, airline industry, healthcare industry, everything. The thing to take away is exactly the points that you and Casey have made. It's not, CrowdStrike, bad company, stock go down, boo. Like that's not the way we should feel about this. It's what can we do as businesses to ensure redundancy, resiliency, the ability to recover, all of those things on ourselves, and then hold other businesses accountable as is your quality assurance up to snuff? Are you testing this in your internal environment before you're pushing it out to everyone else? And more importantly, like, how do we get to a point where SaaS is not a one size fits all solution? Like I do truly believe that we need to get to, hey, we're not going to take your SaaS update. It requires 30 days of testing on our end. Like, it's a good thing that this happened the way that it did, because now we can prevent a real bad one from happening in the future. Like, I am a little grateful that everything played out the way it did, because it could be so much worse. And this is a great learning opportunity for the entire industry.
I totally agree. I feel like we almost need to rename the show. You need a recovery plan because insert reason, because every week these are the reasons why you need to have a plan in place for when things go sideways.
Yep,
exactly. I mean, we talk about ransomware all the time. It happens every 11 seconds, but other things are happening too. And, not to beat a dead horse, but the best way to prepare for this is to plan on it happening, because it
Yep.
could and it might. And when it does, what are you going to do? So I think
Yep.
it's a very interesting topic and definitely aligns with what we're trying to do here.
Yep. I've told the story before. First day on the job, my internship at a previous company, a fellow intern deleted an entire customer database because he was told to. And, you know, like it just happens. So
Yeah.
I think that's awareness is everything and preparation is key. And just like you were a lifeguard, Casey, I think we need those protectors out there that are blowing the whistle. Stop running, you know, stop just updating things, you know.
Yes. Yes. Walk, don't run.
Yeah, don't run the pool. Don't download those CrowdStrike fixes unless you verify them first.
Exactly.
Well, thanks so much for joining us this week, Casey. It was great to have you on the show. You're a phenomenal guest. We appreciate the financial insight as well as the lifeguard stories. And Matt, as always, thank you for being here with us and making sure the wheels don't fall off the plane as we're flying it. Thanks to our audience for joining in and making sure that we stayed on topic. Some really great conversation in there today. We always appreciate your insight. Yeah. Next week, I teased this last week, but I don't know what time it is. Next week, we're going to be talking about the Olympics and what is going on there. I got some crazy stats and facts about ransomware in the Olympics that will blow your mind. So make sure you tune into that. Show is sponsored by Object First. We create OOPI, stands for Out of the Box Mutability. It's the best storage for Veeam. Appreciate having all you here. And as always, stay weightless, stay frictionless, stay zero gravity. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys. Bye.